It's time for the Wrestling Observer Extra.
One more time for old time's sake.
With Dave Meltzer, right here on The Law. Live audio wrestling.
And let's go. We're now smoking with the best.
Welcome back. Hour 2 of The Law. And we always kick things off with the editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Dave, it's been a busy day for you.
It's been quite the week, really. I guess a lot of weeks are like that, but
well, 2 events today, UFC and then
yes.
ROH, right?
Yeah, that and trying to catch up on everything between all the cuts and the deaths. It's been a week.
Well, let's start with the pay-per-view tonight. ROH Global Wars. Overall, what did you think?
You know, I thought the wrestling was really good, but the crowd seemed so dead on TV.
Yeah, very surprising, Dave? They didn't really wake up until Tanahashi and Okada got in the ring in that tag match. That seemed to be the first part in the show where they really came alive.
Yeah, they were. You could see they were up for that. They were up for the Young Bucks. They were up for Colt Cabana a lot, but it didn't even seem to sustain. But, I mean, I thought that the wrestling was good, and I thought the angles were interesting. I'm curious where they're going with everything. The thing at the end was total NWO from from the old Nitro days.
Yeah,
which, is both I mean, I guess it was good in that sense as long as it's followed up well.
Do you know what the status is with Cabana? Because I was thinking coming into this that this tonight made him really look like almost one and done because he wasn't really part of that big angle at the end at all, and the fans were just so into him.
Well, it's Chicago, and it's his first match. It's his championship match. It's the pay-per-view main event. I had the impression that he was in as a regular, but I'll ask. I mean, I know he's not on the rest of the shows this week. So, but my impression was that he was going to be back pretty frequently.
Flipping over to WWE, as you mentioned, and we've talked about on the show already, there's a series of cuts that have already happened. Any surprises in these, Dave, for you?
I can't really say in the sense that, I would say Barrett, but we knew he was leaving in a month anyway, and it was just, I don't even consider Barrett a cut. That's more him, playing out his contract. Mm-hmm. But Sandow, I'd kind of known Sandow since right around WrestleMania time.
Now, why is that? You say you've known that Sandow was going to be cut.
Yeah, I mean,
do you think that's
I'd heard some
mistake?
Names of people that were kind of on the chopping block, and he was there. So at the time, it sort of surprised me only because Sandow's a good guy who got over in a role that should have killed him. And then they just kind of dropped the ball on him, but they just really had nothing for him.
Well, he seems to be one of those classic examples, Dave, where they say, you got to go out there and you get yourself over, and you got to get yourself over. And it's like he got himself over, and they still kind of abandoned him.
Well, he got himself over in a gimmick that had no legs, and it's like the Eugene thing. You know what I mean? It's like.
Yeah.
It's like when you do something like that, it's all well and good, but then when that thing runs its course, and it will. It's kind of hard what to do with you next. They could have done something, but evidently they just didn't want to. He was real popular, so I can see where people would be upset, and I can see where he would be upset in the sense that, they gave him a lemon, he made lemonade, and then they cut him, because they gave him, a short-term lemon. But, as far as the rest of them, I can't say, no, not really surprised with anybody else, no.
And have you heard anything about any others coming on after?
Yeah, I've certainly heard other names, so I'm not sure if we're done yet. If we don't hear in the next week or so. But there's, Adam Rose, just as an example. Adam Rose was definitely on the list. So if he's not, it's one of those things where maybe they just feel that it's not the right time to do it, given what he said and everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about that, and let's jump in there, because Adam Rose, a few weeks ago, claimed he was going to post a doctor's statement about what drug he was on that got him suspended for a second violation of the wellness policy, and it's Adderall. That's what his doctor said he's taking to deal with ADHD. Do you think he has any sort of leg to stand on here, Dave? Because
here's the thing. I know that there's more that we don't know because it doesn't add up, but I don't know what it is, so that makes it very difficult to really assess the situation. I mean, if you just look at it on the surface, it looks like, well, if he's got a prescription and this is what he's got, I mean, and it's not a PED or anything, so, I mean, what's the problem? But if that was the case, why was he suspended for 60 days? Was it a protocol problem? If it was a protocol problem, that's weird. Is it that they don't believe the note? I mean, because WWE, you got to remember, WWE has dealt with, wrestlers that get prescriptions from doctors that probably shouldn't have them, and maybe they don't. It could be that the doctor prescribed it and their doctor did not okay it, in which case you can't do it because their doctors. That's one of the things of to eliminate the Mark Doctor thing. So, but I don't know if that's the case. So because of that, it's hard to really look at it. From one standpoint, you look at it and go that he didn't do anything. It doesn't look like he did anything wrong, but he may have. They may have just said, "Hey, no, we're not approving this," and then he did it, and then he's suspended, and then he brings a note from his doctor. Well, it's not from Dr. Maroon. Dr.
Right.
Maroon's the guy who has to approve it, not your local doctor.
Interesting. And with just to get back to the releases and stuff as well, Adam Rose, Sandow, some of these people, Wade Barrett, where do you see some of these people ending up, Dave? Because there doesn't seem to be, outside of maybe TNA, a lot of spots open for guys like this.
Yeah. My impression of Barrett is that he wants to get into broadcasting, maybe for soccer in the UK.
Right.
So, or if he's got something going in wrestling, he could go to New Japan, I would think. As far as, I think that Sandow would have places to go, and I think Sandow would do very well on the indies at first because people really like him. I don't know how long that would go, but it's he doesn't really fit into a Ring of Honor. I mean, he could go, depending on the financial situation of what TNA, who TNA is willing to hire, I could see him going there for sure. But it's not necessarily. And then some of the others, I think it's going to be tough. Like Cameron, I don't see anything for her.
Yeah. Let's just Cameron's. Oh, she's a whole nother world. Let's talk about Cameron. Leads us into Ryback because she was the one big supporter of Ryback.
That's probably what got her nailed too.
Yeah, exactly.
Justifiably, she's made a few mistakes at this point, but let's.
Yeah, she has, and she's been protected in places that other women would not have been protected.
Yeah, so no one's crying the blues for Cameron. For Ryback, though, we've told the story on the show already in regards to going home and then issuing this statement that he's made. What do you make of this statement and him with the belief that people should be paid even because? Well,
it's a entertainment business, and nobody in the entertainment business is paid equal because there's completely different value of everyone there. I mean, so that doesn't even make sense, and it's almost weird in the sense because I've talked to a lot of people in the business about the Ryback thing, and Ryback when he had some demands on Vince and. One of them was paying for the hotels on the road. And quite frankly, it's kind of amazing that in this day and age that doesn't happen in wrestling. That one was justified. Some of the other ones, I think he wanted a no-cut contract, and WWE is not going to give you a no-cut contract. They were also not exactly on the same page when it came to the money issue, so that was another issue. But I think that a lot of people in wrestling were like, this guy's been in the business for 12 years and he doesn't understand the business at all. I mean, that was kind of the reaction I got from a lot of people when he said the thing about everyone should be paid equal.
Yeah.
Because it's like, do you understand the economics of the business whatsoever when you say that? Because if he didn't say that, you can sympathize with the fact that he got over pretty darn good. They dropped the ball or they made a bad mistake on him and kind of hurt him a little bit. And then they did the stop and start stuff for years on him. But when they would start, he did do well, and then they would stop. So in a sense, I could have some sympathy on the sense that he got over. At one time, he even drew money, but the booking kind of they kind of forgot about him. But there was also a thing where I think a lot of he wasn't that great compared to some other guys, and there's only so many spots at the top, and it goes both ways. But when you say everybody should be paid equal in an entertainment business where certain people's values are so much more than the other, I mean, it's almost like you don't understand what the business is. I mean, he could have complained about more money and that the guys aren't being paid fairly, and I would completely agree with him. But, when you say that, it's like, you don't realize like Heath Slater and The Undertaker are like have different values of the company.
It's like he's negated all his other valid points by making that point that really stuck out. Let's talk about a couple other things with WWE. So they're doing the Cruiserweight tournament and already doing qualifying matches, and now word has come out that it looks that there's a women's tournament to follow that and a tag tournament. It just seems like WWE is making every other organization a part of their minor leagues.
They want it all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the women's thing makes sense down the. I mean, I hope the tournaments aren't too close together, but it does make sense because essentially these are tryout tournaments anyway, and the tag team would probably just be the Dusty Rhodes thing that they did last year, which I think they want to make an annual thing. Which and it worked well. It worked well last year, I thought. So.
But expanding it beyond the borders of NXT, correct?
I don't know about the tag team expanding upon on the borders. The women, yes, the women. I've heard that they would want some, but I think a lot of those women are women that we've seen in NXT anyway. And similar to the cruiserweights in the sense that pretty much everyone like from the independents, if they're in town, can come in on those tapings and job for their regulars.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them, some of them are good wrestlers.
Hey, Santana Garrett should be a full-timer there. I think she's fantastic, and they should just grab her.
And she's anyone who's gone to Japan over and over again and worked with them, you can see that's a, what I mean? That, to me, that shows a lot of dedication, and, it's a big difference when you're willing to, and a lot of, when you're willing to go all over the world to learn the craft, that says something.
And finally, just to touch on this, because we mentioned it, what do you think of Bob Backlund returning to TV this week?
I like Bob. I don't know where it's going because with Darren Young and but I think that they probably just figured, hey, let's try something with Darren
they want
Young.
to make
We've
fun
done nothing with him.
Yeah, they want to make fun of Donald Trump, I think. So
I don't think it's so much making fun, but I think it's to use the popularity of Donald Trump or just the newsworthiness of Donald Trump and kind of do a spoof on that on their show. And I guess they chose Bob, and hopefully, Bob's a really nice guy. I hope he does well with it. And Darren Young, we'll see. Hopefully,
Stop, start.
I know usually when it comes to the guys and things like this, it's like Vince's toy, and then he kind of gets bored with the toy, and now he wants a new toy, and then it's just forgotten. And that's kind of like been, of a lot of those guys that were cut. I think that's been the story of a lot of their careers, actually.
Yeah, it's true.
Dave, we got to say goodbye for this week, but what is coming up in the Observer? News, I guess, on all these cuts?
News on the cuts, news on the shows, story on Billy Wicks, story on Kato Kung Lee, who both passed away in the last couple of days, who were interesting characters in wrestling. A story on the loss of the male audience, which actually I wrote the story a couple of weeks ago. It just hasn't gotten in, but it'll go in this week, which I think we've talked about. And it's really that story is like this untold story that like has kind of been camouflaged just because the women audience has grown, or not grown, but the women audience hasn't dropped. So when you see the ratings drop, you kind of think, okay, it's dropping a certain percentage, but the male audience has dropped greatly. I mean, it's almost scary how much the male audience has dropped.
Wow! So it makes the female audience look
bigger,
larger.
Yeah,
right. Because
by
the
ratio,
when you look and you go like, oh my, like they're getting so many more women viewers, and by percentage, and they are. Mm-hmm. But the flip side of that is, geez, every show's going down.
Yep.
So there you go.
All right. Well, we look forward to reading that and chatting with you next week right here on the show.
Okay, great. Have a great week.
You too. Dave Meltzer, WrestlingObserver.com is where you can find all of the stuff that we just talked about.